No map, no compass, no hope for survival. Come on a winter hike in St. John's with two members of the Royal Anarcho-Geographic Society of Newfoundland and hear their stories. Hello, welcome to Tales Under the Cat Tree. I'm your host, Dupes. Each week, I pair a compelling piece of fiction or autobiography with bigger topics. Words create the worlds we live in, and stories provide a lens into understanding history, technology, or business by connecting personal narratives to the wider picture. Subscribe at tales.dupes.ca for more original writing and engaging interviews. When sun rays crown thy pine-clad hills, and summer spreads her hand, when silvern voices tune thy rills, we love thee, smiling land. When spreads thy cloak of shimmering white at winter's stern command, through shortened day and starlit night, we love thee, frozen land. When blinding storm gusts fret thy shore, and wild waves slash thy strand, through spindrift swirl and tempest roar, we love thee, windswept land. As loved our fathers, so we love, where once they stood, we stand. Their prayer we raise to heaven above, God guard thee, Newfoundland. Those are the verses to Ode to Newfoundland, composed by Sir Cavendish Boyle at the turn of the 20th century. Without the refrains as would be commonly sung, it was the national anthem of the Dominion of Newfoundland, and these days is the official provincial anthem of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland is the world's 16th largest island. It is located far to the east of the large landmass of Canada and makes up one part of the now Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland was the first British colony in the Americas, and it is also where the Vikings with Leif Erikson landed when they first came to North America. You can visit the archaeological dig at Lanceau Meadows on the west coast of the island. The reason for its historical prominence in European times came from the large stocks of codfish that inhabited the Grand Banks off the coast, though the island had long been home to the now extinct Beothic peoples prior to any European settlement. It is a rugged and windswept island with amazing vistas when the weather allows. And that is often the problem. Had I been one day early in my most recent December trip to the island, I would not have made it, as gale-force winds had cancelled flights. This can happen in December. I arrived to an island of snow and ice. A little unusual, though, in early December. But then, these days, and on this island, you never know what Mother Nature will throw at you. So it was that I found myself on a hike with my good friends Dr. Aaron McKim and Andrew Draskoy amongst the pine trees of White Hills near St. John's with Aaron's two huskies. Our group has been doing winter hikes for decades. We used to call them Arctic picnics, and our group we had dubbed the Royal Anarcho-Geographic Society of Newfoundland, or RAGSN, RAGSN. There was nothing royal about the society, but there was a lot of anarchy and perhaps sometimes less geography. The members of RAGSN number a multitude, and these days they live around the world. But today it was just Aaron, Andrew, and me on a short winter hike. The ground was icy, but the day bright and a little windy, as you might hear from the audio. First, let me introduce you to Aaron and Andrew.
Hello, I'm Aaron McKim. I'm a friend of Dupes's, and we've known each other since university days. And we're currently going for a walk in the White Hills.
My name is Andrew, and I have known Dupes for, as long as Aaron, I think. And we're happy he's back to go on another hiking adventure with us.
Yes.
Something that we have done on numerous occasions in the distant past.
Well, I've seen lots of rabbit tracks in these woods over the last couple of days since we had the snow. Oh, look at that frost pattern, and isn't that wild?
I love the sound of the ice in the winter.
It's a beautiful picture. Let's crush it. What could possibly go wrong? What is our
Yep.
motto?
No map, no compass, no
Hope for survival.
And the first winter hike I remember with you, Dupes, was one of the annual winter hikes. What did we call them?
Arctic picnics.
Arctic picnics. Sometimes taking place in blizzards, other times in complete greenery, and we had no snow for some reason. But the particular one I remember was up above Portugal Cove, and it involved on the bushwhacking on the way back downhill, all the way down a hill, where you famously landed on your ass many, 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 many times on the way down. Yeah, you can have adverse circumstance on some of these hikes. Pine needles down your back is one. The same hike where you were falling down the hill, I recall, Mike, I think, fell into a bog.
What?
Somebody walked across this frozen bog, and it was fine. The next person walked across, and it was fine. And then Mike walked across and went through the ice into the bog. So there are potential hazards with winter hikes.
Yes.
You might ask, why am I recording a piece while hiking in Newfoundland? Well, I'm sure most of you have never been to Newfoundland and experienced its rugged nature. The closest I've seen is the west coast of Ireland in Europe. But even still, there's a strange, lonely quality to the stunted trees and shadows on this Atlantic coast. Here's Aaron and Andrew on hiking in Newfoundland.
Oh, it's beautiful, rugged coast. The beauty in Newfoundland is really the extremes of the conditions and the force and vitality that it takes for things to grow here and not just survive, but thrive. It's, for the most part, very unspoiled, and trails are accessible. Like, rush hour traffic, usually at its worst, is like 10 or 15 minutes, and then you're out in the country and it's nice and serene again.
Yeah, there's hikes everywhere. So you can basically walk to lots of good hiking places if you're staying in the city. Better if you can get out of town. The only problem is there's no transportation except for private vehicles, essentially.
Hiking for us is not a silent walk in the woods. For my friends and I, it's a constant banter filled with stories. Through our Arctic picnics, we didn't just have outdoor adventures, but we discovered our collective past and present. For example, Aaron and Andrew have deep connections to Newfoundland and Canada and its numerous peoples. Here's Aaron.
But my mother's family were McKims from Ontario. They're probably the family I'm closest with. They came in through Brockville. My grandfather, McKim, they got their land grant when I think it's 3 or 4 great-grandparent father. There was Andrew and William McKim were the members of Wolfe's army, actually, during the British conquering Quebec. And after that war campaign, they were granted a land grant in Brockville, down less than an hour from Ottawa. So they came to Newfoundland just after Confederation in 1950, when it had joined Canada as part of the United Church. But my grandfather's the only minister that I know of that was threatened with heresy. He didn't want to play the politics game, and they threatened to charge him with heresy. But anyway, he always said that in the ministry, he was shoveling it all the time anyway. At least as a farmer, he had the dignity of choice between BS and chicken S. So you can see he was a little bit obstinate, maybe, in some situations. Yeah, he and my grandmother, when they were first married, they went up to northern Manitoba with the Cree and worked with the communities up there, helped them address a lot of their community health problems that are still the same today, like trying to get clean drinking water or trying to get access to resources and education, and basic nutrition was a big thing. They went back to visit it like 50 years after the fact, and the whole community came out in their regalia and welcomed them as elders from the community. They were given honorary membership to the Cree in northern Manitoba.
And here's Andrew with his history.
Yeah, so my family are both immigrants, mom from England, dad from Hungary. Yeah, so Dad came here to start the interpretation section of the provincial parks. Short version of the story. So I spent my childhood traveling all over the island, going to every park or potential park or interesting place to go for a wander. I pretty much grew up hiking and charging around and skiing. We were skiing, cross-country skiing, where I grew up. It was considered really unusual. People were looking at us funny because we were strapping these wooden things on our feet and going out for a wander. But eventually, cross-country skiing caught on here, and now a lot of people do it.
As we climbed over the icy paths and topped a snowy plateau, and having guided the huskies from any fateful encounters with other dogs, Aaron started talking about ski-joring, which I had not heard of at that point, but turns out it comes from the Sami people in Lapland, in Finland, Sweden, and Norway. If anyone wonders how I manage to get myself in trouble so often, look no further than the company I hang out with.
If you were here longer, or there was a bit more snow, we could try skijoring with them.
Skijoring?
Yeah, did you do that in Finland at all?
What the hell is
You
skijoring?
get 2 dogs and a chest harness and skis.
That sounds like I will end up in hospital.
Well, usually
Let
we
me
start
tell
off
you
with
about the first time.
1 dog each.
Because that's a good example of like what it's
What
like. So we were with Luna, the previous husky, and we're going for a walk in the night. And Aaron's like, "Yeah, you should try out the skijoring. Let her pull you on the leash, and you have a chest harness around you, right?" So I hadn't been skiing all that much in years, like decades, basically. It was a moonless night, and we're on these little narrow paths, and my glasses are all fogging up, and I can't like see a thing. And
the dogs
I'm
can
being
see
pulled
for you.
along by this dog, and it's absolutely great when there's bright snow and we're on a fairly open trail. And then we go into this part where it's like narrow trees. It begins to go downhill, and when you're going uphill, you really appreciate having that like dog turbo assist pulling you up. But here I am, flying, going down the hill in the dark, being pulled full speed down the hill by this husky. It was very thrilling.
I'm glad you survived.
I did, in fact, end up crashing and sitting down quite a bit. But
Because when you get 2 dogs, you can actually get some speed. Like they can pull you flat out on the level. One of the best things is we get out on Windsor Lake when it's really nice and frozen, and they just give her going down on the even. It's just an even pace, and they're just cruising. Like they just get into this rhythm and then going over the snow, and you're like flying over the ice. The toughest part about skijoring with the huskies is learning how to kind of work the harness. And so to be able to give them the right information of how to stop and start and what you want them to do, and train them consistently to get used to it so that they'll know what you want, and then just know how to wrangle them in when things get out of control. What I found is the biggest problem is when you're going along on the trail and you come around a corner and there's a rabbit, and the rabbit puts a huge prey response on these guys. And so they like immediately are going 100 kilometers an hour down the trail. Sooner or later, that rabbit's going in the woods. And if you're still attached to the setup, you're going in the woods full speed until you hit the first branch. What I've found now is it's much more safe for them and for me if when we're going to start going fast and things are going to get a little bit crazy, I unclip them from me and I clip them into one of the straps of my ski pole. So I use the ski pole kind of like a pommel lift, like in my armpit, like I hold the ski pole. So it's you got twice as much distance, first of all. And the second thing is with the rigid pole, if I start going too far one way, I can pull myself back to center. So I can actually course correct. And if worse comes to worse and I'm going to spill, I can just let go of it. And I've got an anchor so they don't end up in Timbuktu by the time they stop.
What's most fun about my spending time with my friends is listening to their stories and the things they've discovered or witnessed over the years in Newfoundland. So first up, here's Aaron.
They had a wedding 2 summers ago now, I think it was, out on, do you know Torbay Point? Have you ever been out there? But it goes way down, way down, way down. My daughter calls it Middle Earth because it's such sort of dramatic scenery, the cliffs and the water and the whole bit on either side. Anyway, this couple wanted to get married right down on the point, right down at the bottom of all of that stuff. But they wanted the grandparents to be able to come. And 4 of the grandmothers were in wheelchairs. They had these 2 like backcountry hiking stretchers. And they had a group of I think 8 volunteers, so 4 and 4. And they did 2 trips down and then 2 trips each up just to get the elders down, right down the tip of the ice of the cliff, It was awesome.
sounds quite exciting.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, imagine being able to do that when you're well past the time when you thought you'd be able to do any hiking or outdoor adventures. It
Well,
must have been thrilling.
And this is Andrew with a story about the sounds you might hear when you're walking deep in the woods in Newfoundland.
There's a hike where you can actually take the bus to the start of it, up out in the Goulds. From there, you can take Shoal Bay Road and or what's called Pipeline Road out to the coast. You can either go to Petty Harbour or you can go over to the Spout. And I've been out Pipeline Road a couple of times, and there's this magical thing that happens there. Pipeline Road is called that because there's this pipe that goes from the Goulds out to the coast. You know, it's in the woods. You don't see it from the road. And the road, I should say, is like a trail. It's basically just gravel and dirt. Yeah, so if you're walking out along Pipeline Road, at a certain point, this strange thing happens where you hear these sort of songs and almost voices coming from the woods. And what it is the harmonics caused by the sound from the water in the pipe where they must have vents or it's open in some way. And it's basically like a musical instrument, but you're not expecting it when you're walking through the woods. And it's all these random notes from the harmonics. So they sound kind of musical. They also sound like someone kind of talking on a radio. And that's not what you're expecting. It's sort of like the part of your brain goes like, is that like fairies in the woods or what am I listening to? It's quite an interesting thing to stumble across, especially, you know, the first time when you don't know it's there and you just have no idea what you're hearing, just some strange musical thing coming out of the woods.
But sometimes hikes come with added benefits, as Aaron retells a story about last summer.
The summer, we've been, the last couple of years, we've been hiking out on one of the newest trails that's been formed. We've gone out to Kelly's Island. There's a trail that's been cut all the way around the island. So it's about 7K and it takes about 2.5, maybe 3 hours if you're taking your time to do so. But the trick is you got to get to Kelly's Island. So you got to access a boat. But this year when we were out there, it was magical. I went with there was a couple of family medicine residents and a few other people. Andrew was there. And one of the residents was from the Midwest, was from the Manitoba, I think it was, and had never really even seen the ocean before. And so she was out on the ocean in the boat to get there. And then she was hiking around and we kept hearing this sound. And I was like, what the heck was that? And it was sounded like a boat like hitting a wave, but it could only be one at a time, right? And then we got into a spot where it was kind of clear. And we looked out and this whale did this huge breach and went, and we're like, wow! And these whales were like feeding and then breaching right off the back of Kelly's Island. There must have been a big school of fish or something out there.
That was awesome. And further over at the far tip, every time we go, we see tuna leaping out of the water.
And this year when we were there, watching the tuna, we looked down and there was like a field right at the bottom of wild strawberries. And we just hit it the right week when they were all ripe. So they're probably, most of them weren't much bigger than your little fingernail, but they were so sweet. We just sat there and ate fresh strawberries for like 20 minutes watching the tuna leap.
So this was our short hike amongst the frozen hills of St. John's, Newfoundland, in early December. In true Newfoundland fashion, though, where stories are currency, I can't help but have one more story from Aaron to close out this episode.
I had the opportunity to go up to Goose Bay for a 2-week rural rotation early on in medical school. So I went up there, and during my time there, I got some funding to be able to go into one of the medical clinics in Nain, right up at the top. Like, whoa, right up at the top, elaborate, tippy top. I'd never been. So I went up there, and one of the things they encouraged me to do was to go spend a morning, having a cup of tea and a chat with the elders, which was probably one of my favorite parts of the whole experience. But during the conversation, the fellow, he asked when I was planning to fly out, and I was planning to fly out on Friday, and this was Wednesday. And he said, well, if I were you, I'd try to get out of here tomorrow because Friday you may not have a chance. And so I had total faith in him and said, this guy's made his living and livelihood off the land. And I would trust it. So I changed my booking for the Thursday, and there were 2 flights today, one in the morning, and I got onto the last flight out in the afternoon. And the first flight in the morning, the conditions were so bad, it was really touch and go. But they tried, and there's freezing rain right before the landing, so the windshield iced up and they couldn't quite see, and they misjudged where the snowbank was, and they clipped one of the wheels and lost a wheel and had to crash land basically in on the runway. And that was the first flight of the day. So that wasn't getting out. And so then the second flight of the day that I was booked on, they had room for me. And I remember they had a very strict weight limit on your baggage, but they didn't weigh you or your coat. And so one of the things we'd done up in Nain, we'd skied up the 10 kilometers or so up to the Labradorite mine, which was up the coast. And we'd gotten a bunch of Labradorite samples. And so I had like about 25 pounds of Labradorite. It's going to cost me an arm and legs. But if I had my great big pockets in my coat, so I just stuffed my pockets with the Labradorite, and that didn't count as weight.
Huh.
And then they put me on the plane, and it was kind of like a school bus. It was one of those old twin otters. And they got two big engines, one on either side. And when they close it, there's actually like enough of a gap to put your fingers through the top of the door. Like it doesn't quite close it off altogether. And just before takeoff, we were all squashed in like sardines. And the co-pilot goes around with a hockey stick, and he's like whacking the wing, and he comes around, bang on the wing. And I'm like, what are you doing? Are you like getting rid of your frustrations or what? And they told me afterwards that was the de-icing procedure. Bang it with a big stick.
Oh, man.
And took off okay. Once we got up like 30 seconds, we were up out of it. Beautiful day, sunshine above the cloud.
And then they're like, oh no, we're 25 pounds overweight. We're not going
to make it.
Thank you to my friends Aaron and Andrew for making both the hike and this episode of the podcast possible. It was a short but wonderful visit back home to Newfoundland. I wish I could have seen everyone in the 3 days I was there, but such is life. To all my friends in Newfoundland, I send you happy and joyous festive greetings. Thank you for listening to another episode of Tales Under the Cat Tree. If you want more original stories and interviews, check out the archives wherever you listen to this podcast. We've covered topics and stories about immigration, artificial intelligence, Stalinist Russia, and otherization, to name but a few. If you have fiction writing you want to feature, or have an interesting story to tell, or know someone who does, please do get in touch with me. This podcast will always be free. Support our work by subscribing and sharing with those who might care. You can reach me through email, contact@dups.ca, Blue Sky @dups.ca, or on my Substack at tales.dupes.ca. The intro music is composed by me. Give your pet a cuddle and your loved ones a hug till we meet again for some tales under the cat tree.
Look at the little sock somebody lost. It's very small. Little tiny foots. I can just see some kid in a backpack kicking their feet because they're in a backpack, and the shoe and their sock flies off and you get the shoe. But the sock got left. But there's lots of socks.